Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. I'm Jodi.
And I'm Eliot.
I want to make sure we thank our sponsors before we jump into our story, but we have some kind of exciting news brewing.
We do.
Or it's like on the way.
We do. And it really stems from the fact that we've been so gratified to get just a lot of listeners and a lot of feedback that we've both been getting emails lately from people who want to tell their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've recorded a number of discussions, and so we're parsing them out and producing them. And I think we're going to come out with them pretty soon.
Yeah, I think probably September. We'll have a few ready.
Yeah, we're going to have a few ready, and they're just great from some terrific people. So if you have a story, a comment, a thought, a concern, make sure to get in touch with us because we're really starting to spark something here.
Yeah, great. So anyway, let's
So anyway.
That's great, Eliot. Zip it. I want sponsors now. No, I just wanted to take a second because it's such an important part that we are so grateful to have people have hopped in so early as patrons on our patreon.com site to support the podcast because they believe in what we're trying to do. So just a quick minute to thank our premier initial sponsor, Mind Over Machines, as well as catscopy.com and GWWO Architects.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you ready to go?
I am.
Great.
So here's my story. I am about halfway through training for this competition that's in September. And I decided this year, it's kind of a goofy thing that I do, but I decided that I want to try and get into the lower weight class for this thing, frankly, just so that I can use it as motivation to get into the lower weight class.
Makes sense.
It's not that I really want to compete in the lower weight class. But anyway, I just love that focus that it's given me through the summer months. And so starting about 6 weeks ago, I met with my nutritionist. They have this really good philosophy and strategy of really looking at like the next 2 weeks and can you do this thing at least 90% for the next 2 weeks, which was a whole that's a pivotal part to the topic I want to hit on today, which was their theory, or not theory, but their philosophy there is that if you can do your nutrition 90% or better, you will get most of the results. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule, but it's 90.
Right, 90-10.
90-10. If you're going to do it 85 or 80, just don't do it that week. Like you just don't do it. So I know that, but I kind of lost focus. So for the first like 3 or 4 weeks, I did it like 98%. I was so focused. I was so driven, dropped like 9 pounds, I think it was. I mean, it was really lots of focus. I was fatiguing, and I only know all this in retrospect because I just went back and kind of mapped it out. All I was conscious of was I then plateaued at this spot for like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And I thought that I needed to lower my nutrition, which happens sometimes. You know, you've lost a certain amount of weight. Well, now the nutritional profile you're on needs to be reduced because you've lost weight. So I thought that's what was happening. So I went in to meet with him and he was like, yeah, I think you're just not totally working it the way you were, like that you're not doing it 90%. Like give me a week doing it pristinely for just a week and let's see where you are. Cause I don't want to take away food if you don't need it, which I was not a fan of. I'm like, I definitely don't want to have less if I don't need it. And of course I did it for a week and I started losing again. So here's what feels important to me about this. I went back and I looked at it because I had been tracking my food and I was even tracking it then mostly, but I'd stopped tracking it a lot. For that, like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, however long it was, I was putting in all the mental effort and the willpower effort of thinking I was dieting. So I was expending all this energy, but I wasn't doing it all the way. I wasn't tracking that regularly. I was having things here and there, whatever. So I was putting all the effort in, but I wasn't getting the reward, which is exactly what they said not to do. Like I was doing it like 80%, 85%. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is I think that this kind of concept is once I mapped it out in retrospect, it made perfect sense to me. I would have been better off to take 1 week off and just eat what I want, do what I want, give myself a break, stop thinking about it all the time, and then come back and give it my focus again than I would doing like 2 or 3 weeks at this like 85%. And I think that this is, and ever since I mapped it out, it's just landing with me about the importance of energy management in running a business or leading any kind of organization, and knowing when you need like to strategically play hooky or to take yourself offline, and I especially see it with my clients in something that I can only describe as decision fatigue. They'll call me and they're trying to make a decision. They're spinning their wheels. They know that's when I can be really useful. And, I can tell the difference between whether they're dragging their feet because they know it's a good idea, but it's scary, or if they're dragging their feet because down deep, they know it's a really bad idea. Or if, frankly, I offered them a hamburger or a cheeseburger, they wouldn't be able to decide because they are exhausted and just worn down to the bone. So I would love to hear your thoughts and experience on this. Like maybe it's just something for me, but I think this is really important, of knowing when to ebb and flow equally as hard.
No,
and knowing when.
It's not just you. And there's universal buy-in, I think, on the smaller part of that picture, which is if you talk to anybody that's in any kind of decision-making role, any role of responsibility, I believe they will have at least several examples to tell you of where they got their best idea in the shower, or walking the dog, or on the commute home, because it's a little mental break. They're not at their desk. They're not looking at a computer. They're not doing whatever they do. Mm-hmm. That's a small break. But where people, I think, tend to get off the boat is the strategic, playing hooky strategically, because that seems like it's an abdication of responsibility.
Yes.
I'm not at my desk. So, it was funny. I decided a couple months ago, I said, this month I was going to make each weekend a 3-day weekend. Mm. That's what I decided to do.
You just said that with such like a subversive twinkle in your eye. You're like,
yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's what I decided. I was going to make it a 3-day weekend. So first week I stayed home on a Friday, and I told my wife that I was staying home, but she had forgotten. And so I stayed home, and she was like, are you sick? What's wrong? And I said, no, I just needed a break. I just decided that I was going to take a break, and I might do a little bit. I might respond to emails, but I might not. And we can just go to a movie in the middle of the day, or we can take a hike or do whatever. And so the whole day, I think she was still looking at me sideways, like, are you all right? Mm-hmm. Are you sick? Yeah. Then when I got back to work, and I felt great, I felt really energized. But the universal question that was being asked of me was, are you feeling better? Like I was recovering from something physical, because if you're recovering from something physical, it's acceptable. At least they would have understood it more if I had said, well, I had a rocky Friday. I had to pass a kidney stone. They're like, oh,
Rocky Friday.
Got it. It's fine. But if I just say that, oh, I just needed a break, I just took a mental health day, they might say the right things, but they look at you kind of sideways, particularly if you do that more than once in a blue moon.
Well, that's why I call it strategic hooky. I would love to just flip the whole, to me, it feels a little bit like, back in a time when we thought the world was flat, fully acknowledging that some people think it still is, but not you. So there's just so much, and I won't bore you with all the neuroscience about it, but there is so much literature and so much neuroscience studies and physical studies, and across the board, everything from yoga to what I was just telling you about with nutrition to exercise. All of them have these built-in ebb and flows that you're supposed to work really hard, and then it's in the rest period where you actually gain the strength. And it's counterintuitive, but it is in the periods of not doing that you actually make the leaps forward. And that's not woo-woo, that's actually science. And there's a horrible but fascinating kitten study about this.
A horrible kitten study, which for some reason I think is in the running for the title of this episode.
It may be, but not like rabid kittens. It's terrible. I almost can't tell you this. Like, with big sharp gnashing teeth.
And a mean streak a mile wide.
Nasty kittens. No, it's a terrible study, but they like had these kittens where some of the kittens, they just played with them constantly, and other kittens, they like played with them and then let them sleep, and then played with them and then let them sleep and played with them. The awful part is that then apparently they kill the kittens to like look at their brains.
Oh, good God.
I know, it's awful. It's awful. But they're studying the brain development in kittens, and the kittens that I can't believe I'm telling this story. The kittens that had periods of rest in between the developmental play things that they were doing had some huge percentage more of brain development than those who had just been, kept going. The look on your face is classic.
Yeah, because I just don't know
so
how
don't
we
miss
rebound
the point.
from.
Don't miss the point. So here's a totally different way to say it. That classic. I mean, it's almost so cliche. I don't want to tell the story, but the like sharpening the saw story, the old man and the young man, and they go. And at the end, the old man kept taking breaks and the young man thinks he's winning, and the old man wins because he chopped more wood. And he says, it's because I kept stopping to sharpen my saw. And people tell that story. Intellectually, they get that story. But when the rubber meets the road, they don't have the courage. And I do think it's an issue of like courage to live that story. So why is it so hard to do something that science and even lore supports as a smart thing to do?
Because I think that people have trouble, I know I do, backing up from the way we do things. This is the way we do things. So for example,
that is quite possibly my least favorite sentence in the entire planet.
It's horrible, right? We're going to do it because this is the way
it is.
We've always done it. And that poster in my office that just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's still not incredibly stupid. I mean, courtesy of despair.com.
Dun, dun, dun.
But people really, if you run an insurance agency, for example, it's easy and it's also comforting to look to your right and look to your left at the other people running insurance agencies and make sure that you fit roughly within the norm, even saying that you give better service and you do this, but you fit roughly within the norm. Because for example, if I went to a bar association meeting and I said, oh yeah, I just took one of my large conference rooms and I converted it into a place for sleep pods. And I'm going to give my employees, hope they make use of 20, 25-minute naps or whatever the optimal time is. There would not be one lawyer in that room that would think I was anything but crazy.
Right. So it's actually something much more insidious than that's just the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, if your lawyers pumped out results, whatever that means, like 10 times better than those other, would you care? I mean, where is the, when I say it's much more insidious, it reminds me of this quote I once read about perfectionism. It said perfectionism has nothing to do with the pursuit of perfection. It's driven by this underlying nasty voice that says no matter what you do, it's not good enough. That there's it's never enough. It's never good. It's this like insatiable addiction to always thinking there's more to do. And the thing that fascinates me about this paradox is we all have proof of I took a break. I like detached for the weekend. And now that I came back, I have 10 times more clarity. I have more space in my head. I'm making decisions faster, better. Things are better. I've seen it on the physical side. Like every 4 weeks, we do what's called a deload week, which is you do much lighter exercises for a week, which is hard to do. You're like, I'm supposed to do lighter. I'm not just taking a break. You have that same conflict. But then the following week, I'm able to do more. And we all know it's true. And yet, like, I'm just fascinated. And you see the results. So therefore, why is it so hard?
Well, maybe you see the results. And here's the thing.
So you're afraid you won't see it. Like, what if I don't? And I took a break.
No, I just think that you may be looking at the wrong results. So for example, you said, what if all, when I talked about all these lawyers would think I was crazy if I had these sleep pods. And you said, well, what if they saw that your firm had better results? Okay, but let's look at the way my industry normally measures results. My industry doesn't keep track of wins and losses in litigation. It's not like a pitcher where you can say he's got a 13-5 record and that that's better than having a 9-7 record or whatever it is. What my industry looks at is hours. And so I could put in 2,000 billable hours a year, whether I've actually taken that decompression time or not. And there's no measure of whether those 2,000 hours yield better results for the client than 1,600 hours would have yielded.
Which is unfortunate because yeah, because I bet you if you did, that is exactly what you would see. And here's another like study to back it up. They did this study where they did cognitive testing with a group of people. They split them in two. One group of people had to stay awake for 36 hours straight. The other group of people just shifted to a 6-hour a night sleeping for 10 days. Instead of what they had been doing was like 7 or 8 hours previous to this. That was part of the study.
Okay.
So, and for a lot of us, 6 hours is still a reasonably respectable amount of time. So keep that in mind as we...
At least not uncommon.
It's certainly not uncommon. Yeah. So it's not like they put them on a 3-hour night.
Right.
So at the end of this period, they did another round of cognitive testing. Now there's 2 layers to the horrors of this. One is both groups had about equal amount of cognitive degradation between the first and second testing. So I was awake for 36 hours and got tested again. I just simply only slept 6 hours a night for 10 days and did cognitive testing. The really scary, shocking thing is that Group A, not surprisingly, who had been awake for 36 hours, knew that they were not in a great state. Kind of like someone should drive me home. I'm exhausted. I'm bleary-eyed. The second group reported almost zero awareness of cognitive degradation.
Wow.
So they were as bleary-minded as if they'd been awake for 36 hours, but they had no recognition of it. And that is where this like strategic, so you know how they say by the time you're thirsty, you're already like really dehydrated?
Yeah.
I think that by the time you are feeling exhausted in your business or not even exhausted, but bleary, like when simple decisions become complicated, you are so drained of energy. When it feels like the last moment you could pause and take stock and rest and renew and get your act together is probably the moment where pausing to rest and renew and get your act together is the most important. But it's the most important thing you could do.
It absolutely is. But once you reach that point, if you've been pressing yourself so hard, I think that's likely the moment you'd think, well, it's impossible. I could have done it before, but now I'm really, really behind it.
You do. So I would love to offer the suggestion that it's impossible. I mean, imagine for a second, we might have even mentioned this before. I don't know. It's a fascinating metaphor for me. Imagine the first person who suggested pit stops in races. I mean, does that not like, can you see the guy who's like, I have an idea. Let's stop in the middle of the race and change our tires and like put new oil in and do whatever it is that they do. Can you just imagine people like, I'm sorry, you realize it's a race,
right? We have
right?
to go fast.
Like this is a go fast. This isn't a pull over and have a sandwich kind of a moment. And yet, if you didn't, like if any race car driver did not do that, he wouldn't be able to finish or she wouldn't be able to finish the race, right? I mean, you would blow out tires, you would not get as far. And so it's become, in racing, it's become a given. But your brain is not meant to run marathons. It's built to do sprints, like shorter periods of activity with some kind of renewal period. That is a scientific fact. And we don't do it. We plow all day long. We plow weeks on end. And the real thing about this topic, though, for me, is because I do this all the time. I'll have like a free Saturday and part of me is like, I could use a break. I need a rest. I should just like chill out and do nothing. But part of me is like, or I could use this time to get like really organized or like get ahead on something so that future, both of which seem like they would offer ultimate relief, right? So it's like, oh, I could get this project done or whatever. I then proceed to sort of do both. A little bit of it. So I don't really move forward on my project, but I don't really take the day off either. And that's what I was doing with the nutrition for about 3 weeks, where I'm putting a lot of the mental and emotional and psychological energy into flowing, into working, into doing something, instead of like consciously choosing one lane or the other.
And it's almost worse because that way you're like Group B that's getting 6 hours of sleep because you think you're actually renewing or concentrating on nutrition, but you're not.
I'm not.
And you lack the insight to know that you're not. And so that's what I take from that really is, and just like your point about by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, is that what I started to do, and I don't take every weekend as a 3-day weekend, but what I decided to do as an experiment there just for me, and I've held over to a certain extent going forward, is build a routine, build a practice. So I scheduled time. It wasn't just, well, if I have time or Wednesday looks like it's going to be a slow day, I'll go home at noon or whatever it is. But I scheduled time so that I'm not thirsty. You schedule time. You're actually drinking throughout the day, so you're not dehydrated. You don't have those warning signs. So those are the 2 points that I see. One is scheduling time, but the other is having your company set up so that you value the gains of clarity as opposed to just the kind of symptoms, like in my world, billable hours. That has nothing to do with how good you are. Mm-hmm. So you've got to be able to see the reward that comes with clarity and not penalize people from seeking it.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've a lot of my clients are incredibly driven, motivated, just, like ever to the wall kind of folks. And they are the people who I hear worry about being lazy.
Yes.
I've never heard a truly lazy, a person that I would consider to be lazy, bemoan concerns that they are lazy.
That's exactly right. That's true.
And so that worry about being lazy or fatigue is often, I think, a good sign that maybe this is something for you to watch out for. I also 9 times out of 10 with a new client, I'll hear that they literally say the words like they'll somehow like brag about their ability to endure. They're like, I can take a lot. I can go a lot. And I'm always laughing. I'm like, is that a moment of pride? Like you can drag grind yourself into the ground.
But it is a moment of pride. If you see me here first thing in the morning before anybody, and then my car is the last one in the parking lot, a lot of times that's a moment of pride.
Yeah. I guess I want to call bullshit on that. Like it's just misguided. I think it's sadly misguided. And I think it begs the question, what do we really value? And if you value hours clocked, then yeah, I guess go ahead. But if you value like smart outcome, if you need to be smart and creative and resourceful in your company, then at that moment when I said, when you least feel like you can take the break is probably when you need to. It's like saying when you realize you're crazy, crazy thirsty, and that probably means you're already super dehydrated, you would never go get a drink of water then. It just doesn't make sense. And the challenge that I lay down, and I have to do this for myself over and over again, is to go ahead, like take myself offline. I literally play hooky when I need to. Like I cancel everything. I do something incredibly, a lot of times I'll go to the pool without my kids and just sit there and stare off into space. And people are like, oh, your kid's here. I'm like, no, I'm just taking myself offline or something like that. And the thing is, and this is why it's not a huge leap of faith. If you do it, like I can bordering on guarantee you end up feeling better. Like you have more mental space for things. You come back refreshed and you just have to notice that evidence and be like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. This actually helps. You feel the axe is sharper. So
the 2 things that I would say is, why did you hedge? You said you can borderline guarantee that you'd feel better.
Well, because
you will feel better if
you
take
will
that time.
feel better. I can't promise that you'll feel all the way better. I mean, it depends on how. Fair. So if you are so thirsty that like your kidneys are going to shut down and you have a sip of water, like your tongue's going to feel better, but your organs are still going to be freaking out. So it depends on how much you've run yourself into the ground. I mean, I've worked with some folks who are so exhausted, but like those 6-hour-a-night people, they don't even realize it, but their brains are like need a massive defrag. I'm dating myself, but remember back, it was so satisfying to watch. Remember when computers
yes, I know exactly
have scan, disk, and defrag?
And you have the different colors and you're putting them together.
You watch them. I don't know if that graphic had anything to do with reality.
It was very satisfying.
But it was so great to watch. You're like, look at everything like decluttering and reordering. That's what you can feel it, right?
Absolutely.
That's what your brain needs. Like you need a scan disk and a defrag every now and then. And to pretend otherwise is just foolish.
No. And so let's put it this way. I'll just make it personal. I want my neurosurgeon to have 8 hours of sleep coming off a 3-day weekend. Because if anybody out there wants their neurosurgeon on the day of surgery to have 6 hours of sleep a night, be part of Group B, I want you to write into the show.
Exactly.
So that's our story.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful for everyone who's listening in, and we're especially grateful to all of our patrons who've joined us over at patreon.com to support our efforts here. And we hope to see you next week.
And listen, having told our story, We'd love to hear yours.
Ooh, yeah.
So I guess what we're trying to say is the floor is yours. Go to sohere'smystory.com and join the conversation.
Wait, before you go, there are 3 things that we really want you to know.
First, you can find show notes and links to all of the random things we happen to mention during the episode by visiting our website, sohere'smystory.com.
The second thing is we like to talk.
And not just to each other.
That's right. So what we really want to hear is your story. So while you're there, you'll also find links to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and other ways to contact us with questions, suggestions, or even to share your own story.
And if you love the show and want to support future episodes, you'll also find the link to our Patreon page where we share our extra bonus content.
Or if you can't support us financially, it'd be great if you could leave us a 5-star review at iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcast service you use to listen to us. And be sure to tell all your friends.
Until next time.